Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is the Core Set 2019 set review for green. Alright guys, we're going to jump right into this green, and spoiler alert, green is probably my favorite color, probably the most consistent as far as just power, card over card, versus all the other cards in the format are set. So let's just get right into it, talking with Blanche Armor, a 3-mana enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each forest you control. So if you're in draft and sealed and you're getting into a lot of forests or playing green, you're going to get a +2/+2, +3/+3, maybe even a +4/+4 for just 3 mana on this aura here, turning a creature from a 1/1 into a 4/4, 5/5, and so on, and not even mentioning putting it on a 2/2 or 3/3 and higher. This card is super good, thanks to being draft and sealed being mostly just basic lands once you get into that format. For this card, as far as standard goes, probably not going to see any kind of play. A little slow. Wish it was 2 mana instead of 3 mana. That's kind of I think the difference it makes here. But we'll definitely see this as a brick house in draft and sealed. Next up for us, we have Bristling Bore, a 4-mana 4/3. Bristling Bore can't be blocked by more than one creature. Super good in draft and sealed. Again, not a card for standard at all, but a card that's coming in and making sure that only like trading with one creature 1/1, or just destroying a creature 1/1. If opponent has lots of 2/2s, this thing is just going to run over them forever. Very good card. Not necessarily a card you want to pick like really highly early in the pack, but a card you definitely want to kind of round out your green source if you're in draft and sealed. Next up for us, we have Centaur Courser, another good vanilla card here, a 3-mana 3/3. Simple, straightforward, but 3-mana 3/3 is super good and super straightforward, and just decent overall in draft and sealed. Not going to see any kind of standard play, of course, but this is a card that really kind of rounds out your 14th and 15th pick in draft and sealed. Next up for us, we have Colossal Dreadmaw. Yet again, this is what, the 5th time in a year, or 4th time in a year, something like that. 6 mana, 6/6 with trample. This is a brick house. This is a huge bomb for you for draft and sealed. Of course, never going to see standard play, but a card that you always want to get into as a giant bomb if you're in green in draft. Just super good, just overall. But yeah, they could have literally picked any other card here instead of Colossal Dreadmaw. They again reprinted Colossal Dreadmaw, so I don't know. I mean, that's just I don't know if that's creatively lazy or this card is just that good, I do think it is pretty good though in draft and sealed as your giant bomb. Next up here we have Colossal Majesty, a 3-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. This is an interesting card. There might be some brewing around in Commander, brewing around in Brawl, and maybe even Standard. It is kind of slow in Standard, but I do think for like draft and sealed, if you have a lot of stuff with 4 power, this card actually goes off and gives you a ton of card advantage. But there aren't that many creatures with 4 power or more in draft and sealed that you might get into. You may get into maybe 3 or 4, and then after that you're kind of dealing with like this card just being a dead card on the turn. I don't think this is a card you want to get into in draft and sealed necessarily, but maybe in Standard, Brawl, and Commander, this is a card that will definitely do some work there. Next up we have Daggerback Basilisk, a 3-mana 2/2 with Death Touch. Again, simple, straightforward. Death Touch is a card that you want to have on the blocking or on attacking. Super decent for us at the common slot as well for draft and sealed. Not going to see any kind of standard play, but this is a brick house for you to block whatever you need that's coming at your face that's huge, or maybe just getting some extra damage before it kind of trades something automatically based on the Death Touch here. Moving on, we have Declared Dominance, a 5-mana sorcery. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. All creatures able to block it this turn do so. An interesting card here. I'm not that excited for it being at the uncommon slot. It's a card you may want to get into as a one-of or just a sideboard card in draft and sealed. Not going to see any kind of standard play because it's so expensive. But being able to kind of say, I'm attacking in for lethal, or, I'm attacking in and you need to block this creature with this card with Declared Dominance. I think that's interesting, kind of a good way to get rid of a creature on our opponent's side of the field if they're kind of like building up a board presence. But at the same time, you might just be trading with whatever you're attacking out with Declared Dominance here. It's kind of expensive for me. I'm not sure I want to play it too much, but it is a nice little combat trick on our turn, even though it's not really technically a combat trick. It's a main phase 1 combat trick before combat. How's that? Is that a little bit better? Next up here for us, we have Druid of Horns, a 4-mana 2/3. Whenever you cast an aura spell that targets Druid of Horns, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. This is a super interesting card that I feel like might be in a Simic list in Standard, honestly, with like, Cartouche of Knowledge, Curious Obsession, those kind of cards where they're really cheap. They can make this really powerful, and you just get a bunch of 3/3s on your side of the field. I think this is really good for Standard, like a brew around card. As far as draft and sealed, if you get a lot of auras, this card is super good as well. However, I do think it's a little bit more difficult to do that in Draft and Sealed all the time, or consistently at least, and not kind of just like draw into auras and not your creatures and then just die, you know, because it's a little bit harder to do that in Draft and Sealed. But in Standard, this card is probably pretty good and a good brew around card. Might be a good brawl card as well. But yeah, the only thing that makes me kind of not like this card is that it's a 2/3 and not maybe like a 3/4. That kind of makes it the difference here, or maybe in a 1/4, that'd be even better. Just being able to block something would be nice. And this card really doesn't do that as effectively as I want it to at the 4 mana slot. Next up here we have Druid of the Cowl. This is a card from, I believe, Kaladesh. 2 mana, 1/3. You can tap it, add 1 green to your mana pool. Super simple, straightforward. Again, you kind of need mana tappers eventually in Standard or in Draft and Sealed, so this is a good card for that. It's also got a nice butt at 3 toughness. Not going to see Standard play because Llanowar Elves is in the format, but Druid of the Cowl is just fine for Draft and Sealed. Next up we have Dryad Greenseeker, a 2 mana, 1/3 Dryad. You can tap it, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. I wish this was like put it onto the battlefield tapped. That'd be amazing. It's not, so it's still good though. But the only thing is you probably will be doing this on your opponent's instep because this is a nice blocker at 3 toughness. Being able to look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you throw it. So you're basically, you know, shifting through your deck a little bit faster than normal. If it's not a land, you do show it. So it is kind of awkward there for that. Or you don't show it, but you do look at it. So it's kind of like giving you a little bit of a scry ability, saying what's next or seeing what's next. I'm kind of enjoying this card a lot. I think it's very, very good as far as being very aggressive. Being able to get out a land into your hand, having a land drop every single turn, or just getting through a mana pocket. And if you think there are multiple lands on top, you can go Instep, Greenseeker tap, and then on your upkeep, Greenseeker tap again to try and maybe get 2 lands off the top, just in case you think you're into a mana pocket. I think this card is super good for Draft and Sealed. Probably not very useful in Standard, just a little weird and kind of awkward in that format. Probably a good card, though, in Commander or in Brawl, though, for sure. Next up, we have Elvish Clan Caller, a 2 mana lord here. Other elves you control get +1/+1. It's only a 1/1 as well. And you can pay 6, tap it, search your library for a card named Elvish Clan Caller, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This is basically meant for, you know, multiples, so a standard deck for sure. I think this is a really, really fun elf lord for you to have in Draft and Sealed. Now, this is a card that you may not want to get into if you get this as your pack 1 rare. You may want to hold on to this. If you get into this as your pack 1 rare, you probably want to hold on to it and see if you can get into elves, but it's kind of risky since it is just a 1/1 that needs other elves to be viable. So this might be a rare I honestly will like maybe pass on if I see that people are getting into more elves by pack 2. But Clan Caller, if it's your pack 1 rare, just pick it. It is a rare. It's very powerful. But yeah, you need multiples of this card for the second ability to be useful. That's really not going to happen in Draft and Sealed. But the first ability is really, really nice if you get into elves in Draft and Sealed. Moving on, we have Elvish Rejuvenator. This is a 3 mana 1/1 elf druid. When it enters a battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is decent for Draft and Sealed, being able to kind of ramp you a little bit. A little awkward for Standard because it is 3 mana. If it was less than 3 mana, like 2 mana, this card might be a house that I would really enjoy using a lot. But for 3 mana, this card is just kind of awkward, a little too slow. But for Draft and Sealed, it's fine. The 1 toughness and the 1 attack or power here is probably my least favorite part about this card. It just does nothing. It just basically comes on the battlefield and blocks something, and that's about it, which you may not want that in the mid to late game. But in the early game, this card is amazing. Moving on up here, we have the Ghast Bark Twins, a 7 mana 7/7 tree folk with trample, and the twins can block an additional creature each combat. This is a brick house attacking in because it has trample, and it's a brick house being able to block multiple creatures or 2 creatures whenever they attack out for like an alpha swing or something. This card is super good as a top end bomb at the uncommon slot in Draft and Sealed. Not going to see any kind of standard play, but a super powerful card if you get into it in Draft and Sealed. I mean, this card is just so good. It is 7 mana though, so it is something that you may not get into as often as you want to, but Draft and Sealed is always a little bit slower than every other format, so getting into this is not as I would say annoying as other types of big bomb creatures. Moving up here, we have Jirper Guy. This is a 3 mana 3/2. That's already pretty decent for Draft and Sealed, but you can tap it, and target creature you control can be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. Keep in mind, this ability is not a tap ability, so if you have enough mana, you can do this multiple times on different creatures. So if your opponent has just a bunch of 1/1s or 2/2s, they just can't block, and they may just die to an Alpha Strike to your board state. So this is a very interesting ability. It can also be targeting on itself too, so target creature you control, which this is this one. I like this card a lot in the green slot in Kaladesh block, and I like this card a lot in this particular slot in Core Set 2019. Super good card overall, though, for me there. I'm not going to see any kind of standard play, of course. Moving up, we have Giant Spider, just a classic card for Draft and Sealed, a 4 mana 2/4 with reach. I'll take this all day long if I'm playing green and draft and sealed. Just amazing being able to block, flyers on your opponent's side of the field, but also just being a truck, being able to block whatever your opponent has on the ground as well. 4 toughness is a lot when it comes to draft and sealed, and this is a card that's just kind of seen play like almost every other draft format. I'm always happy to see a giant spider in the format because it's always going to block something important. Moving up here, we have Gift of Paradise. This is I believe, a Kaladesh card here. 3 mana enchantment aura. Enchant land. When Gift of Paradise enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life, and you can tap it and add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Very good, very interesting. Very, very good in standard for different like ramp decks. And decent enough for like Commander and Brawl as well. For Draft and Sealed, it's decent because it gives you 3 life. That's the most important part, and it ramps you a little bit as well. So this is a card that you may not want to get into main board on game 1, depending on if your opponent is super aggressive or not. But I do think kind of in game 2, if you can kind of get into the ramp situation with this card, I think this card can do a lot of work for you. At least until you get to a giant bomb by gaining life and getting you that mana. So good card for Draft and Sealed if you get into a lot of like higher end creatures like that 7 mana 7/7 we talked about earlier. But besides that, this is a card you might just be passing on and for other like value creatures or value removal spells. Next up here we have Gigantosaurus. Speaking of a value creature here, a 5 solid green mana, 10/10 vanilla. This card is a brick house, literally. This card is just like a skyscraper falling onto the battlefield. This card is stupid. Now it's a vanilla, so it doesn't really do anything, but that doesn't mean it's not useful. In Draft and Seal, this card, if you get in this to your rare, you might just want to be like, you know what, I think I'm probably going to be in green on this draft. It's super impactful. I think in Standard, this card is going to see a ton of play in the mono green Stompy deck, turning on Ronas immediately, and Ronas giving this card Trample is a 12/10 Trample. I think that's what it is with Ronas' ability on the following turn. This is just stupid. Getting this out on turn 4 is available. I think even a turn 3 might be available too. This card is super dumb. Definitely get into it if you want to for Standard. This card is going to see play in probably Standard, Brawl, Commander, and of course Draft and Seal if you get it as your rare. This card is silly. It's just a vanilla, so it's just like people are going to say you can block it all day long, but at the same time, the second you can't block it, it like kills you. So it's one of those cards where it's like you need answers for it immediately, and if you don't, it just runs you over. Moving right along here, we have Gore Claw, Terror of Qualsisma. I think that's how you pronounce that, or Qualsisma. That's how you pronounce it. Maybe I'm terrible. I'm slowly turning into Saffron Olive for these pronunciations. All love to you, Saffron. Just letting you know that we both have problems with pronouncing things. 4 mana 4/3. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 mana less to cast. That's kind of scary. And whenever Goreclaw Terror attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. So this card, which Gigantosaurus, if you get both of these in your Draft and Steel, that's amazing. Go green all day long. These cards are crazy together. This will probably see some play as well in a mono green Stompy list in Standard as well. It's just a really good card, making everything cheaper for you and making sure that your stuff gets through with real damage with trample. This card is super good, and I'm definitely going to see if it's your rare in Draft and Seal. It's only 1 green mana, so you can actually splash other colors with this a little bit more easily. So it's very, very powerful for that. But yeah, this card is dumb as well. Another good rare for green. Green has so many good rares right now. It's kind of silly. Moving on here, we have Greenwood Sentinel, a 2 mana 2/2 with Vigilance. Not bad at all. Vigilance is very, very good for this card, so it's either going to trade when it attacks in, or, trade when it blocks. But if an opponent doesn't really want to do that, then it's just going to attack out all day long and be able to block on our opponent's turn. So, very, very good card in green. I feel like there was a 2/2 Vigilance creature in white in the previous set. It was also very good. Putting it in green here is also super nice, and I love the art on this card particularly. Just a very good heroic pose there. Moving on here, we have Highland Game, a 2 mana 2/1. When Highland Game dies, you gain 2 life. This is a nice card to trade with something and gain you some life at the same time, basically having lifelink for the turn. Very, very good card for this. Also a decent attacker, but we really want this to be a blocker to be able to trade with something or attack in and trade with something to make sure we get that 2 life gain as well. So decent Draft and Sealed card. Not going to see any kind of standard play. Next up, we have Hungering Hydra, X and green 0/0. Hungering Hydra enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. It can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, which is insane. And whenever Hungering Hydra is dealt damage, you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So basically, if you don't kill it the first time, it gets larger and larger and larger, and basically needs a sorcery or an instant spell removal piece to deal with the card. I'm not sure if this will see play in Standard in the mono green Stompy deck. It's very, very likely though, because we do have Land War Elves and things like that to make this card huge when it enters the battlefield, maybe a 4/4 or 5/5. And also if it does get blocked, it just gets larger and larger. It's also got the upside of only being able to be blocked by one or more than one creature, so this is also very, very good as well. And standard, being able to kind of just get in over and over again, just being able to chump block forever and making it a huge creature. There might be a list for this card, honestly, in a red-green list with like Fling or something like that, so this card can do a lot more damage that way. As far as Draft and Sealed, again, if this is your rare, just like the two other rares in green, this is a card you would be like, maybe I'm going to go into green. You know, it's one of those cards where if I pay 4 mana, it's a 3/3, but at the same time, it can't be blocked by more than one creature, and it gets larger every time it gets blocked or kills something, you know, so I think this card is amazing in basically every format you want to play it in, and it's also a Hydra, so, you know, that's like the iconic green creature, right? Moving right along here, we have Naturalized, a 2 green mana instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Super simple, straightforward, great card to have back. I think it would have rotated if it didn't get reprinted in this particular set here, so Naturalized is always a good card for you. Very simple for us to use, and very straightforward, and, you know, you kind of always need it as a good sideboard tech card in Draft and Sealed. And just like Duress and Essence Scatter and the like, Naturalized is always going to be a good sideboard card in Standard. Next card here for us is Oakenform, a 3 mana enchantment aura. Enchant creature gets +3/+3. This is an oldie but a goodie again. Love Oakenform a lot. I think it's a really nice pick for you if you're getting into a little bit more auras, especially that green card that gives you auras as well, or white card, I believe. This is a very, very good card in the particular Draft and Sealed format. Not going to see any kind of standard play, but a good way to pump up a creature that's maybe a 1/1 like an elf and turning it into a 4/4 and making it just a huge bomb on your side of the field. I think this card is super good. I wouldn't get into too many of them though for Draft and Sealed, but I think overall this is definitely an aura that's kind of worth it. If only this was +3/+3 in Trample, that would make this card just over the edge amazing. Next up for us, we have Palika Worm. This is a 7 mana rare 7/7 with Trample. Palika Worm enters the battlefield, you gain 7 life, and when it dies, you draw a card. This is like another oldie but a goodie. I haven't seen this actually in quite a while. Super fun card in Draft and Sealed. If it's your rare in Draft and Sealed, like pack 1 pick 1 or pack 1 rare, I would try and get into it. It's a huge way to kind of you know, decimate your opponent because it's the 7/7 trampler, but also you gain 7 life, so even if it does die, you have a huge like upswing on your life total, and if it does die, you draw a card, so it replaces itself. It just does a bunch of stuff here in Draft and Sealed. Of course, it's only a rare, so you won't see it too much, but it is one of these rares that's like, it's kind of built just to be for Draft and Sealed. You probably won't see this in Standard really at all, but it's still very, very good in that format too, against like a mono red aggro list from the sideboard going in, being able to gain you a lot of life once it hits the battlefield. So this might be a good sideboard tech in mono green Stompy against the mono red aggro lists going around right now. Moving on here, we have Plummets. Nice, very good removal card for us. 2 mana instant, destroy target creature with flying. Super simple and straightforward for Draft and Sealed. Always going to see you play for sideboard tech in game 2, and you might see some sideboard play in Standard once everything else rotates from Amonkhet and Kaladesh. Next up here for us, we have Prodigious Growth, a 6 mana enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +7/+7 and has Trample. What? What? 6 mana for an aura? That's so expensive. It's also a rare, so you're not going to see it that often. I also love the flavor text here. Vivian Raid says, look how cute he is now. Or it is now. Super adorable. I love the art on this card as well. You know, it's one of those rares where it's like, if you're in green, you're definitely wanting to pick it because it is a card that just kind of pushes a 1/1 into an 8/8 with Trample, which is insane. But at the same time, because it's not on a creature, it kind of like an opponent can kill the creature before you put this onto a creature, so it can just do nothing. So with these kind of auras where it's like a very expensive style aura like this where it's 6 mana, I'm really cautious about kind of putting this onto something. But if you're in green and you have a ton of stuff already that's really, really good with auras, then kind of go for this card. I think this card is super fun as a rare. It's probably going to get passed as well in pack 2 and 3. Just because of how like specific it is. I hit the mic there. Just because of how specific it is. Also, this card probably won't see any kind of standard play, but you know, you can always try. I think this will probably see more commander and brawl play instead. Moving on here, we have Rabid Bite. This is a typical green card for us. Green, 2 green sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Basically, a green removal spell here. Very, very useful for us, being able to get rid of a creature before we attack. So very simple and straightforward for Draft and Sealed. Not going to see any kind of standard play, a little too slow for that format. Next up, we have Reclamation Sage. Haven't seen this in a while. A 3-mana 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. This is a great elf card for the elf deck in Standard, but also just a great draft card for sure, because it can destroy, you know, that giant enchantment we just saw a minute ago, but also any kind of artifact they have on their side of the field. So again, very, very simple and straightforward. A 2/1 as well, so not as impactful on the board state as far as an attacker, but it's not really meant for that. It's meant to be like a body that can block, but also something that can kill an artifact or enchantment. So very, very good card. Always nice to see it in a draft pool. Next up here for us, we have Recollect. Wow. 3-mana sorcery. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This is a very nice card for us. There's a lot of graveyard recursion in black. So this is one of the few cards in green that gives you that ability as well. So I like this a lot. There might be a black-green draft deck kind of coming up from cards like this as well. So if your opponent does removal one of your creatures, you can just grab it from the graveyard again with Recollect. I think that's very interesting. But probably just a sideboard card to bring in game 2 after you're seeing your opponent having a ton of removal from red or black or something like that. So another good card to have in the sideboard tech in draft. Not going to see any kind of standard play though. Next up, we have Rock's Oracle. I think that's how you pronounce it. 5-mana 4/2. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So a card that replaces itself, but also being a 4/2, being able to either trade with something or block something really effectively. I like this card a lot, especially at the 5-mana slot in common. So a nice like mid to low pick for you, kind of filling out that 14th to 15th slot for creatures in draft and sealed. I'm not going to see any kind of standard play though whatsoever. But you know, it's also like a Rhino Monk, and that's always interesting too. Next up here, we have Root Snare, 2-mana instant. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Another Fog. So green-blue Fog is like becoming more real by the day. So I feel like this is another card you're going to put into that mill deck in Standard. For draft and sealed, it's just another card you want to put in as a card to kind of, you know, hold off creatures from your opponent's side of the field for a turn or two. So very, very nice for that particular thing. But it doesn't, you know, do much other than that, so you probably don't want to get too many of them in your draft and sealed pool, unless you're playing maybe a Simic like control list or like blue-green in draft and sealed. But besides that, you know, it's okay maybe to have like a 1 of in the sideboard to bring in after game 2 or after game 1, just to make sure that you have like some protection from a lot of creatures if they're very aggro based. But yeah, for Standard, all I see is putting this into a blue-green mill deck and just running that all day long. Next up, we have Runic Armorsword. This is a rare that I feel like might see some modern play. A green 2/5. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. So in modern, for me, it's like if you crack a fetch land or something, you automatically draw a card while they hunt for a land. I think that's really impactful in green. But again, it's kind of at a weird slot where it's like, it's a 2/5, so very, very good at being able to block. But the 3 mana here means it's competing with a lot of good spots in Modern. As far as draft and sealed, this is a card where you almost want to pass it because there's really not too many abilities that aren't mana abilities in the actual like board state right now for Core Set 2019. But for Standard, there's quite a few. There's Exert still around for a while. There's a couple other ones. But Runic Armorsword may be useful in that particular format. It is a 2/5, so it can, you know, take a hit from Glorybringer and still keep on ticking. So that's a kind of a thing this card exists for too. But in draft and sealed though, I might just be passing this card because it's not as impactful. It is a big butt though, so it is something you might want to get into if you're in green on pack 3. But by then, you know, it's probably not going to fill any kind of slots you want to fill for draft and sealed. But I think for Standard and particularly Modern and maybe Commander, this card's going to do a lot more work there. Moving on, we have Scape Shift. This is another Modern and Commander card. 4 mana sorcery. Sacrifice any number of lands. Search your library for up to that many land cards. Put them onto the battlefield tab. Then shuffle your library. Really like this card for Standard as well because there's a bunch of weird Standard decks going around with lots of land stuff like Tatyova. And you also have the Crucible of Worlds, which is an artifact we'll talk about later. And then also Crucible Worlds on a stick, which is the snake guy from Amonkhet. Just a bunch of land stuff going on right now in Standard. So this is a card that might see some play in a weird brew around deck. But this is a much needed reprint for our Commander and Modern as well. So just a good card like that to see as a reprint in those older formats. So very good for that. Draft and Sealed. This is a card that kind of thins your deck a little bit. And that's about it. Really not much as far as like lands go, as far as things entering on the battlefield like that are cards that are in the format right now in draft and sealed. So this might honestly be a mythic if you're being competitive in draft that you might just kind of pass over. But if you open this, you know, you can always just pick it for the money as well, for the reprint value for Modern and Commander. Moving on here, we have Talons of Wildwood, a 2-mana enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has trample. You can also pay 3 and return Talons of Wildwood from your graveyard to your hand. So it's not that powerful, but you can return it to from your graveyard to your hand over and over again and put it on multiple creatures. And I really like this ability, especially in Draft and Sealed, because you put this on a 2/2, making it a 3/3 with trample. That's very, very good. Putting it on a 4/4, making it a 5/5 with trample, also very good. And of course, you have Gigantosaurus, making it an 11/11 with trample. That's insane. I like this card a lot. Mid to high pick for me, mid to low pick for me, sorry, for my picks if I'm getting into green a lot in Draft and Sealed. I have just a lot of powerful creatures. I want to get into this, but if you're in like elves specifically, this is the card you might just pass on because it doesn't really like pump them up that much. It's much better when you have like a 4/3 or 5/5 and so on. Moving up here, we have Thorne Lieutenant, another rare for us, a 2-mana 2/3 elf warrior. When Thorne Lieutenant becomes a target of spell or ability an opponent controls, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. You can also pay 6 and Thorne Lieutenant gets +4/+4 until end of turn. Now this is a card that's very, very finicky for me in Draft and Sealed. The pay 6 here, making it a 6/7, is super interesting and very impactful because you can do that at instant speed. So that's nice to be able to kind of get around some removal as well as just get in some awesome damage if you do get unblocked. The other ability basically replaces itself, making a 1/1, which is nice, but not as impactful as you kind of want it to be. I think that's something that you kind of have to work around with like Blossoming Defense and things like that in Standard. I think this card might not see Standard play though. It's just kind of awkward. It is a 2/3 though, so it's very, very nice at the power slot in Draft and Seal, but it is a rare, so it's something you probably want to get into if you want to get into green, but if not, it kind of really does nothing for you in that regard. I think this card's fine, but not amazing in Draft and Sealed. As far as Standard goes, probably won't see any kind of play from my perspective. Does replace itself, giving it a 1/1, and you can pump it, of course, making it into a 6/7. So there is that. So there may see some play for this, but I'm not like excited to see that a 2-mana 2/3 that you need 6 other mana to make it like viable. That's really not what I want to see in Standard. Next up here we have Thornhide Wolves, another like classic vanilla card, 5-mana 4/5, super good, super straight up and like in your face in Draft and Sealed. I would take this all day long as a top end bomb for you in Draft and Sealed. Never going to see Standard play though. Next up we have Titanic Growth, another good Draft and Sealed card, 2-mana instant, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. This card is amazing, a great combat trick. Wish it was basically Giant's Growth or whatever, the 1-mana +3/+3, but I guess we'll never get that again. But Titanic Growth is a huge, like, second place to that, and just a very good card to have in your Draft and Sealed pool. Again, never going to see any kind of Standard play, I feel like. Next up, we have Vigilant Balroth. Bailiff. There we go. I was going to say Balrog for some reason. It looks like a Balrog. A 5-mana 5/5 Beast Vigilance. This card is amazing. It's an uncommon for you, and it's a great bomb in green. I love this card for Draft and Sealed. This card honestly might see some sideboard tech in Standard because of Seal Away and things like that once rotation happens, so do keep an eye on this card for sure at the top end bombs in your sideboard for Standard. But for just Draft and Sealed, this card is a huge house that comes in and can actually attack and block forever, and that's awesome. Next up we have Vinemare, another good card for us, a 4-mana 5/3 with Hexproof. That alone is amazing in Draft and Sealed, but Vinemare can be blocked by black creatures, which means it can basically get around Death Touch in like most of Standard. There are some green cards that have Death Touch as well, but I mean, Gifted Aetherborn is really the top end card for like Death Touch right now in Standard, and Vinemare gets completely around that. So it's another card where I feel like it might see some sideboard play in like Standard for mono green Stompy. And as far as Draft and Sealed, this is a 4-mana 5/3 with Hexproof. I mean, this is what more can you ask for? I wish it was a 5/4. That's you can always ask for a little bit more. But a 5/3 with Hexproof is amazing, and it gets totally by black creatures as well. So if your opponent is playing black, this just goes right straight towards their life total. Love it. Love that it's an elemental horse as well. Bring on more horses. Always more horses. Next up, we have Vivian Raid. This is our Planeswalker for green. A 5-mana 5 loyalty legendary Planeswalker Vivian. Plus, when look at the top 4 cards of your library, you may reveal a creature card or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So very, very good for us. -3, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Wish it was just creature. The creature with flying is fine. I'll take that. And -8, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. Once you emblem in your this deck or green deck for this card, you're basically going to win the match, I feel like, because of all the cards on your side of the field that's attacking. Of course, Settle the Wreckage is a card that exists in Standard at the moment, so they can get around it. But besides that, I love the +3 here. +1 here. The -3 isn't that impactful. Wish it was just a little bit better, like maybe destroy target artifact then draw a card. I feel like that might have been a bit better. But +1 is fine. Having 5 loyalty for this card is fine as well. So this will probably see some good sideboard tech play in a like mono green stompy deck, or maybe a like Gruul deck in draft or in standard. As far as draft and sealed, you won't see this that often. But if you do get into it, try and go for the emblem, and then just run your opponent over with giant creatures that are vigilance, trample, and indestructible. And let's see, moving on here from this, we have Vivian's Invocation. This is a 7-mana sorcery rare. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When a creature is put onto the battlefield this way, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. This is an amazing rare if you get into green and draft and sealed. This is a very bad card in standard. It's just kind of boring and kind of expensive. It is kind of interesting though. I mean, if you want to get into that for standard, this feels more like a commander and brawl card for sure. But yeah, if you are a green deck and this is like a pack 3 pick for you in draft and seal, it's kind of silly and it's kind of dumb. Gets you a creature, and that creature also just shoots an opponent's creature to dust, and that's really fun as well. Next up, we have Wall of Vines. I believe this is the last card here. Let's see. Yeah, this is the last green card. So many good green cards in this set. Wall of Vines is a 1-mana 0/3 defender with reach. Again, simple and straightforward, but this is a card that's kind of like Giant Spider, which it'll be able to do a lot of work for just 1 mana. So I think this card is going to see a lot of play in Draft and Seal. Not going to see any kind of play in Standard, but a very, very useful card to kind of finish out that 14th and 15th pick slot for creatures in Draft and Sealed. And that's going to wrap it up, guys, for green. Green has so much power here, man. I feel like green is probably the most powerful. It's been in a long time. I feel like white is probably still the best color, but green is either the first place as well or a very, very close second. Love every card that's in green right now. Just a lot of power on Draft and Sealed, and a lot of good stuff you can put into in Standard as well. But I do want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've got a ton of content going forward for Core Set 2019. And of course, deck techs are starting right after it releases on MTGO. Draft as well and all that kind of fun stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.